Welcome back, everyone, to Screenplay Rewind as Friends and Family Month continues. I'm Jeff.
I'm Ron.
And I gotta tell you, man, the fucking 180 from last week to this week. Like, holy fuck. I need a hug.
I'm sad, Jeff.
Dude.
Like, when that movie ended, I was just depressed.
But it's fucking great at the same time.
But all that being said, it's time to move on from Taming the T-Rex to this week's movie.
Yeah. See, I was sad at the ending of Taming the T-Rex. But completely different reasons. You gotta love the stories that lead to these movies happening. So, I got access to an animatronic T-Rex for a month. You want to make a movie? So there was a serial killer in Korea 30 years ago. Yeah, you want to make a movie?
To be fair, if someone gave you and me an animatronic T-Rex for a month, I mean, a movie is getting made.
Memories of T-Rex.
Oh, no. I'm just the T-Rex running through a rice paddy. A rice field.
Oh, God. Yeah, we'll get to Memories of Murder, selected by none other than
the little
Soapey.
T-Rex hands with the knife.
Also, just love the roller coaster ride of Soapey bringing us The Last Airbender last year, and then bringing Memories of Murder onto the show this year.
Oh, my neck, the whiplash.
Yeah, the guy, man of many facets, Soapey.
He's a complicated individual.
Yeah. Even when I eventually meet that dude in real life, I'm pretty sure I'm still going to call Soapey instead of his actual name, because once you've called someone their online handle for several years, they're just that name, you know?
Whenever I see or hear his name, it takes me like half a second. Like it's almost instant that I recognize it as Soapey, but whenever it happens, it feels like 10 minutes to me that it takes me to think of his name.
But he's Soapey.
I mean, he's Soapey.
Yeah, it's on his birth certificate, bro.
I want to know if anyone he does know in real life just refers to him as Soapey all the time.
Maybe. I know I would. Just abso-fucking-lutely. Like, there's no going back, bro. Once you go Soapey, you never go back.
Well, how come you don't call me Ronsense to my face?
I knew you as Ron way before the inception of Ronsense TV.
Please. Mr. TV was my father. Call me Ronsense.
No, wouldn't I call you, what was it? Ron Plays Games Badly? Was that?
Yeah, Ron PGB.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what I'll call you. It's like, no, please. My father was Ron Plays Games Badly.
Hey, I had truth in advertising.
I am Ron Plays Games Poorly.
I still want to make another account called Ronja.
Ronja? It's pretty solid.
Well, because we talked about making a ninja knockoff account, which would be Nanja.
Yeah.
And then somehow in that conversation it ended up with me being called Ronja.
Oh, Nanja was from Speed Racer, right?
Right.
Just one of the greatest puns of all time. One of the most genius, underappreciated jokes of all time.
I've often thought if I ran my own chat bot, like from a Raspberry Pi or something, because you can just download a script and run it on a Raspberry Pi. I often thought about what I would call it, because Lobos is like the perfect name, Lobot Jr.
Yeah, it's really strong.
It would either be probably Ronimus Prime or Ronja.
Yeah.
I could never decide.
Just run both.
Just
won't be confused. Just won't be confusing at all.
Just give it an alias of both.
I think that ends up at a paradox. You'll have David Tennant showing up at your house to fix shit, so go ahead and do it.
Dude, I am on it immediately then.
Oh, man. Yeah, so we referenced it, but last week was the beginning of Friends and Family Month, and our lovely friend Bobby brought us Taming the T-Rex, and we talked about having a coda of some of his thoughts. And he went over to your house a few days ago and apparently divulged some details. So I got it here, Ron. Did Bobby allude to him actually liking Taming the T-Rex? Did he know it was a colossal shit pile that I would yell about for an hour and a half? And that's purely why he picked it. So give me the details, Ron. I got to know.
Basically, just to be clear, He didn't come over to my house explicitly to explain himself. Like he didn't show up with flowers and a bottle of wine.
Although he should have.
Just open the door and there's Bobby with flowers and a bottle of wine, and we just sit down and he explains himself to me, asking if I'll take him back. No, he basically just said that it was more or less his first B movie that he ever saw when he was a kid.
Okay.
That's what set him kind of on the path to, like, you know, Attack of the Killer Donuts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then it was on, or he caught it somehow. Bobby's kind of a strange individual when it comes to tech. Like, he doesn't stream. Like, he doesn't have a Netflix account. He doesn't have a Hulu, Disney Plus. He doesn't stream anything. So it's either got to be on cable or he has a DVD of it. And he caught Tammy and the T-Rex somewhere and was watching again. And he recognizes everything that both you and I said. Like, he was somehow he agrees with everything you said and everything that I said about the things I said in its defense and the things you said against it as an adult. But he still had that nostalgia for it that allows him to kind of not forgive, but ignore the bullshit in it, which is kind of, I mean, if you watch enough B movies, you can't watch the average B movie without just straight up ignoring some of the problems with them like that, because they all have something usually.
That's fair. Yeah, and I totally get, like, nostalgia can cure a lot of wounds when it comes to movies. Like, everyone has movies that they can basically admit to themselves. It's like, yeah, this movie sucks, but I love it.
But
and
the
that's
T-Rex
totally
parts are great, and that's what you show up for.
Yeah. There are about 25 to 30 minutes of solid B movie. It's just surrounded by a lot of horse shit. So that's fair. If you just shut your brain off to the the blatant homophobia and necrophilia implications, it's fine. If you just take away that, it's a great time. But I was just curious to what extent he had, because it was a very specific pull. You know, it wasn't just a bad movie. It was a very specifically pulled B movie.
I think he said he caught it on TV somewhere recently or something. I don't know. I'm still very shocked. I don't think Mystery Science Theater has done that movie. It seems like a perfect movie for them.
Yeah, that's really, really surprising.
I'm sure Riff Tracks has. Riff Tracks has done everything.
Yeah, probably.
But I did a search before for Tammy and the T-Rex. And the T-Rex. But I never found anything for
Mystery Science Theater.
For Mystery Science Theater with it.
Yeah. You'd think that would have been like a prime candidate for the reboot on Netflix, you know?
Yeah. They did one of my all-time favorite movies that I found on DVD randomly one day and bought the fuck out of it, but they didn't do Tammy and the T-Rex.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is, like, maybe is why they were kind of hesitant was because, like, you know, like Paul Walker had passed away in real life. Maybe they were kind of hesitant to. But he's also, like, barely in the fucking movie. He's only in the movie on screen for, like, what, 10 minutes?
And, you know,
like,
commenting on his performance isn't commenting on his death, you know?
Yeah.
There's ways that you could still do that tastefully.
But there's also 10 billion rabid, dumbass Fast and the Furious fans out in the wild that make those movies like $1 billion every time they release. So they're kind of crazy.
Oh, they welcome it, though. They did a Mitch movie, I guess the first Mitch movie, and Jodan Baker was really upset about it because they made fun of his movie.
About that.
Yeah, and he said
he just hate them for, like, his entire life, basically.
Yes, and in an interview, Jodan Baker basically said if he ever met any of them in real life, he would deck them.
Damn.
So what did Mystery Science Theater do? They grabbed every Jodan Baker movie they could find.
Yeah.
And
that is the proper response there, my friend.
Instead of just making fun of the movie, it seemed like he was targeted in those movies, and it was amazing. By the way, those are some of the best Mystery Science Theaters.
I bet. No holds fucking barred when you're taking on Jodan, bro.
If you don't know who Jodan Baker is, if you've seen GoldenEye, he's Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's also probably most famous for the first Walking Tall movie in like the 70s.
Yep.
And then The Rock did it later.
Yep.
But
he did. Yeah, he did a few others people probably recognize him from. He had a very weird career.
One of my favorite quotes from Mystery Science Theater. I don't even remember which one of the three says it. I saw it in a GIF recently, and I instantly remembered it though. Was Mitch? Even his name says, "Is that a beer?"
Oh man!
Like every Mitch movie is just like, "Hey, do you have a cheeseburger? I could really go for a cheeseburger. Is that a beer? Oh man, I need a cheeseburger with this beer." Like that is all they do over and over.
Oh man,
it's so good.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the Taming the T-Rex coda that I've been desperately waiting for the last few days because I didn't get to.
Yeah, it was his introduction to B movies.
Okay,
which got me thinking. I have no idea what mine is. That'd be a good podcast question to circle back to.
First B movie. I couldn't tell you what mine was either. The first ones I legitimately like enjoyed, I'd probably say are like Attack of the Killer Donuts and Velocipaster. We watched a bunch of them for your Twitch streams. Do I remember any of them outside of like the two good ones and House Shark? No.
I don't even remember anything about the two good ones. I just remember they existed.
Yeah.
I remember Sharkenstein. Sharkenstein was amazing.
Sharkenstein. That's the one that was your offline image, right? Where it
still is.
It looks like an 8th grader just slapped some fucking Getty images on a background, and that is an actual like transitional shot.
Oh, it's worse than that. They took a Getty images and just copied and pasted it over and over again. Like the exact same pieces of this image are in the same image like 6 times. Just copied and pasted over like a picture of a beach. Like it's copied and pasted over top of trees and everything.
It breaks more dimensions than like the fucking mirror dimension in Doctor Strange, dude. It's actually a work of art. And as soon as we saw that, I remember I was like having to pause it and be like, we thought we'd had like a stroke. It was like, are we seeing this? Because it just breaks all laws of fucking physics.
It's their establishing shot for the lab. They showed it like 6 times in the movie.
It's so good.
It's so bad and so good.
Oh, it is. It is cinema.
Oh, I have a good one for you. I just Googled Sharkenstein and found an image.
Oh my god.
Do you remember their Dog the Bounty Hunter alike?
Vaguely.
He's
years now.
He looks just like Dog the Bounty Hunter. No, yeah. This is Sharkenstein. If we had a podcast distribution service that had show art where you could upload different show art for every episode, this would so be this episode's.
Genius. Oh god. That needs no introduction.
Oh my god, it's so good. I was hoping to find that image without just taking it from my Twitch. Oh, I found it.
It is sublime.
Copy image. Yeah, this is great radio.
Remind me later. I'm gonna put that on. I'm gonna randomly put that on our Twitter feed with no context. The tweet's gonna have less context than this fucking floating series of doors and like fucking like they're clearly like cellar doors.
Cellar doors used as a front door.
Yeah, and there's like 3 cellar doors used as front doors, suspended over random planks. And there's I love the chimney too.
It's like one of those like like one of those picture hunt games. Like what's wrong with the picture?
Yeah.
Let's say something from highlights.
What's wrong with the picture? Everything.
So you're gonna post that, and then I'm just gonna reply with this picture of this church and say, "Yo, the dog, that's fire."
Oh Jesus Christ!
Oh,
that is pure cinema. That is pure cinema.
This has been a time already.
Yeah, no fucking joke. Yeah, so we typically open up our shows with a Q&A section, and I have a question for you this week, Mr. Nonsense.
I'm sure I don't have an answer.
You probably do. I'll probably think about it for a second, but I think you'll come up with one.
I'm not
All right,
Radio
so
Shack.
this is slightly ripped off of a audience member question for either Bonfireside Chat or Watch Out for Fireballs, one of the Gary and Cole joints. But
Duckfeed TV. Check them out.
So the question they had on their podcast was if you could send a video game back in time to your childhood self.
Oh, I heard that.
And my question is if you could send a movie back to your childhood self. What movie would you send back in time? And I thought long and hard about this, and I think I have the perfect answer.
All right.
I'm gonna be curious what you think about this, because the logistics behind this, as far as what it sets up your then future self to be able to experience, I think would be really, really fun. So you send back in time Avengers Infinity War to your childhood
but
self.
Not in game.
But not in. So here's the thing: you send back Infinity War, right?
Oh no!
And your childhood self is like, "What the fuck? They made Guardians of the Galaxy into a fucking actual movie." And think about if, out of context, your first introduction to all the characters in the MCU was Infinity War, and how interesting that would be. Because it takes place at such a fucked up point in time for those characters. Your first introduction to Steve Rogers is him coming out of the fucking darkness as Nomad, basically. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on? There's Rocket Raccoon, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is in a fucking movie. Your mind would be fucking blown, dude. And you open up with your first introduction to the Hulk getting his ass kicked by Thanos, and you're just like, what the fuck's going on? This is amazing. And then you get to basically watch the rest of the MCU and get back to that point, wondering how the fuck did we get here? And I just think it would make it really, really interesting, because you go through all of that and you still get to end with Endgame. So it's the important kind of final ending points to a lot of those characters is still unspoiled for you, but your introduction is that, and just how epic some of the fight scenes are. You get to see what comic book films can eventually become with that big of a budget and that much respect paid to the characters, And I just think it'd be awesome to experience MCU, to just how excited you'd be to get to be introduced to all those characters, in the MCU versions.
You said all of that, and I think in actuality, my response would be the fuck is this? What the fuck is happening? Because that movie got built up to from 2008 to whatever time Infinity War came out, 2018, 2017.
That's the thing, though, is I'm sending it back to my childhood self, so I already know a lot of those comic book storylines. So I'm. It's not
That's true.
It's not like I'm being spoiled on some of it. Is stuff I had already read. So and more so just being you get to experience just how epic those movies could get, eventually, and you're just what the fuck's going on?
That's true. I was exposed more to the cartoons than I was the comics.
Mm-hmm. So what is something you would send back in time to your childhood self, Ron?
Man, that's a hell of a question.
Because it's really specific too, because you want to be able to properly enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
I have an immediate answer, but I don't know if it's the one I would actually do or not. It was the first thing that popped in my head, so I assume that's a good sign.
I'd say so.
But I don't know.
What's the one that first jumped to your mind?
The 2007 Transformers movie.
Interesting.
Because I mean, the thought at the time between me and Mr. Poe, my boss at the time, was, holy shit, we're getting a live action Transformers movie. I never thought that would happen. Mm-hmm. And at the time,
so it's just the thought of it existing would get you jazzed as a kid.
Oh, dude, as an adult, it got us fucking jazzed.
Yeah, but especially as a kid, like it would blow your mind as a kid, getting to realize this is gonna happen later.
If you wanted to fucking ruin me, you could send me that Rise of the Beast trailer to my childhood self, and I think I would just abandon Transformers altogether.
I haven't seen the trailer. Is it bad?
Oh, I was angry the movie even existed, and I was doing everything I could to avoid that trailer, and it was at the front of John Wick 4.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, I went and saw John Wick 4, but that trailer wasn't attached for me, so I haven't seen it.
I didn't
yet,
have the Flash trailer. I had John Wick 4. Now, my answer might be, depending on that Flash movie, it might be that Flash movie.
Just for more Michael Keaton Batman?
Just for more Michael Keaton Batman.
That's fair.
And, like, seeing Zod punch through the windshield of the Batwing and rip Michael Keaton out of the seat and stuff. Like, holy shit, man.
Yeah, the movie looks awesome. I couldn't care less about any of the Flash scenes in The Flash, but everything else looks fucking dope, dude. I can't wait.
The Flash, ironically, is about the best Batman movie they've ever made. But just the idea, like, okay, so at the time, hear me out. I know we've lost half the listeners from my answer, but hear me out. The 2007 Transformers movie has problems, but it's not that bad. And it was the first time I ever saw Optimus Prime. We don't talk about ourselves much on this show, but I was an IMAX projectionist for like 9 years. And the IMAX screen that I projected on was 50 feet tall, 70 feet wide. Optimus Prime is 50 feet tall, and there is a shot of him in that second Transformers movie.
The forest stuff?
In the forest battle, they filmed that with an IMAX camera. Quote unquote, filmed that with an IMAX camera. It's all CG characters. But the bottom of his feet are at the bottom of the screen, and the top of his head comes to the top of the screen. So you're seeing life-size Optimus Prime in front of you in that scene.
I actually went and I didn't like the second movie at all, but I went and watched.
Dude, that forest battle is like
for the forest battle in IMAX, just because it was actually kind of worth seeing just for that in IMAX. It was pretty fucking cool.
That forest battle is like 4 of the best minutes of movies. Like, it's just Optimus Prime tearing people apart, and it's amazing.
That fucking movie is a piece of shit, but that scene is pretty cool if you get to watch it projected like that.
The reason I love that scene so much, not just is that scene cool, I was a little bit, probably not angry, I was a little bit annoyed at the 2007 movie for Optimus Prime just sucking real bad at his job. Like, he couldn't fight worth a shit in that first movie. He got his ass handed to him, and Shia LaBeouf saves the day. I'm like, what is happening? Like,
just do it, man. Just do it.
Like, Optimus, just get up, man. What the fuck are you doing?
He had like early. Do you remember early on in the Justice League cartoon, Superman just getting his ass kicked constantly because that's all they did to establish the threat level.
Right.
It had like that syndrome of,
basically
we got to show Optimus getting his ass kicked to establish the threat level, not realizing like the entirety of his character is just getting fucking wrecked. It's not fun for the fans.
I read the prequel to that movie. Poe bought it and loaned it to me. I think I read it in like 2 shifts at the theater. In that canon, like, they're already thousands of years old by the time they get to Earth because they're immortal. Like, he has like eons of history fighting Megatron, and Megatron's been frozen for a few hundred years, and suddenly he forgets how to fight Megatron. It was ridiculous, but seeing that movie, the way I felt seeing that movie for the first time, seeing Optimus in that back alley transform into a robot for the first time on screen,
pretty mind-blowing for a fan.
We've talked about this before. My moral compass as a kid, like, I learned everything about like being a good person from Optimus, not Batman like you did. It was Optimus for me. Optimus Prime is still one of my all-time favorite characters out of any media, and to hear Optimus Prime's voice coming out of a live-action character on screen, that was quite the experience. And I don't love Transformers as much now as I did when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was completely obsessed with it, and I still love it. But I I'm trying to imagine anything else that would just make my head explode the way that movie would if I was like 10.
And like you said, like the first one's not terrible. Like it has
The first one is bad by default now because the others are so awful.
Yeah, but in like a nutshell though, it's not.
No, no. I got the answer for that. Bumblebee.
Yeah,
Bumblebee. Dude, the first
strong.
11 minutes of Bumblebee. Just send me the first 11 minutes of Bumblebee alone.
That's all you've ever wanted in a live action.
You sat through me watching that movie in theaters. I kept restraining myself from just like reaching over and grabbing your arm like we're on an airplane taking off and being like, Jeff, Soundwave is on screen, Jeff.
It's Soundwave, bro.
Like Ravage was a cassette tape. It came out of his chest as a cassette tape, Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty strong.
Like Jeff, I just wanted to throttle you and just be like, Jeff, Wheeljack's face lights up blue when he talks. Jeff. Like,
yeah. Because it's just trying to show like what would most blow your mind as a kid, and that totally makes, it's just like I was saying, it's like what would most blow my mind as a kid is seeing that like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Captain America are all going to be in a live action movie that is not,
right.
Because you think about like, I was a 90s kid. They're like superhero movies were a joke for basically like the entirety of the 90s.
Made for TV Captain America movie.
Yeah, like that was what I was most exposed to. Like the fucking Schumacher or Batman movies, like that shit.
The Toxic Avenger. They
didn't become decent at all until like Blade and like what was that 97 or 98? Like they were a joke. And then to get to like realize
Blade was all dark and edgy, and that grabbed our attention real fast.
Yeah,
I actually like those Blade movies, and even the third one.
I don't really remember the third one that much, but I didn't.
Then that means you like it more than most people.
Yeah, a lot of people fucking hate that movie, but yeah, I remember really liking the first and second one.
Everyone's favorite is the second one, and it's pretty strong, I gotta say.
Second one's the Del Toro one, right?
I believe so. It's the one with the, what are they, reavers or whatever? Their jaw splits open. They're feeding on vampires.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Del Toro. Yeah, doesn't the second one have Ron Perlman in it, which means it's by default Guillermo del Toro?
I was about to say, now that you mention it, there's no way it's not Del Toro with Ron Perlman.
Ron fucking Perlman, man.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Bumblebee. Probably a close second is Pacific Rim, because I was a big Godzilla fan and
hell yeah,
giant robots, Power Rangers and stuff.
Just to have that theme song in my life as a kid. Yeah, dude.
I think both will blow my mind. I think Bumblebee though would probably it would probably end me, to be honest. It would probably end 10-year-old me.
There's nothing else to look forward to in life. I saw Bumblebee.
I peaked. I peaked at 10 years old.
But yeah, if you would like to have a question or prompt,
grim.
Yeah, we gotta brighten the mood by talking about memories of murder. If you would like your question or prompt discussed by Ron and myself,
why wouldn't you after all this?
And why wouldn't you? Indeed, you can always email us screenplayrewind@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at SPR Filmcast. For as long as Twitter is still in effect, I am more. I'm. You know about the whole blue sky thing?
The
next thing
and the hell thread.
I signed up for that fucking lifeboat just because I want to fucking dip, and I never want to think about Twitter again because I'm just kind of done with it, to be honest. So keep an eye out for future uploads from Ron and myself, or we might ditch the Twitter. I don't know. It's about as grim as Ron peaking at age 10 because he saw Bumblebee. Yeah.
It scratches every itch. It's a good movie. The Transformers in it are amazing. It's accurate to the show for the most part, right?
It's got John Cena. What else do you need, man?
And then it has doses of Optimus Prime here and there. And the first 11 minutes is Optimus Prime being a pure badass, and he looks like Optimus Prime. He doesn't have the flames and stuff.
Yeah, the first 50 minutes of that movie is all anyone ever wanted that was a fan of that property.
Like, no one ever gets hurt in the show, and like 13 minutes into the movie, a Decepticon just rips Bumblebee's throat out.
Yeah, it's metal as fuck.
Like, what is happening? And Bumblebee kills him by taking the dude's own missile and jamming it into his chassis.
Yeah, I gotta watch that. I've actually only seen Bumblebee once. I need to watch that again.
One of the Decepticons kills a human, and he like explodes into green goo, and the lady screams and runs away, and the Decepticon goes, "I like the way they pop." I love that scene so much.
Yeah, I gotta watch that again because
we can move on after this. The best line in I think any movie I have seen in the last few years is them trusting the Decepticons and John Cena standing there going, "They're literally called Decepticons." Like, why are we doing this?
All right, we gotta move on though. This is Friends and Family Month. We gotta talk about the movie that Soapey picked. We gotta move on,
dude.
We gotta go. So Ron, first of all, spoilers for Memories of Murder, and I actually recommend that just like Soapey told me, if you are not that familiar with this case, go into this movie blind, because man, like, I was on the edge of my seat throughout this like whole movie. This was, you know, when you're watching like a really, really good subtitled movie, and after a point, you no longer even realize you're reading dialogue because you're so sucked in. That was me after the first couple of like crime scene investigations in this movie. I just got so sucked into the plot of this, and not having any familiarity with this real life serial killer. And we'll talk later on about some of what eventually happened with this case in real life.
This movie is
fucking fascinating.
This movie is not kind to the regime or the police in the era either.
This movie's ahead of its time in that way.
It really is.
This came out in 2003, and this has the kind of social commentary you would see in a movie now, like right fucking now. Really ahead of its time. So this was selected by Soapey. We alluded to it in the last episode. He considered Parasite from Bong Joon-ho for us to watch, but he wanted something that neither of us had watched. And I'm glad he picked this, because this, like I told you, this has been on my my short list for a long time, just because I've always heard how fucking good it was. One of the very first movies that put, Bong Joon-ho on the map, and you see why, because this fucking movie, dude, it is intense as fuck and engaging as hell.
Probably one of the best movie posters of all time.
Dude, that poster is so good. You can't not be drawn in by how just like simple and incredible that poster is. Like, dude, and you think about it, so after you've seen the movie, how symbolic it is that the girl in red is wearing an umbrella. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like, the poster is fucking incredible. Holy fuck. But yeah, so this is Memories of Murder. This is directed by Bong Joon-ho. He co-wrote it, and then like I believe the co-writing credit is from the writer of the play this was loosely based on. I will pull up the Wikipedia page, because it wasn't listed specifically on IMDb, but I'm pulling up the Wikipedia page. So it is based on "Come to See Me" by kwang-rim. And again, we're going to butcher a lot of names.
I was going to say, you're going to have to forgive us for the names.
Yeah, we'll do our best, but we just don't know the pronunciations, and we sincerely apologize. We're just not fluent in Korean, so we're going to mess up names.
Yeah, we are uncultured Americans.
We really are.
So,
Yeah, so it's based on Come to See Me, which was a play loosely based on this real-life serial killer, which is essentially the Zodiac killer of Korea. Like, that level of, unsolved case that eventually, like, just becomes part of, like pop culture. It's like inescapable there.
Yeah, according to Wikipedia, one of his alternate names is literally Korean Zodiac Killer.
Yeah,
because he was referred to in media so much kind of as that.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, what was it's kind of known as the Waste Song serial murders. I
thought it was a song.
Yeah. Did you? No. You actually talked about how there was a documentary on Roku about this. Did you watch that? I have not gotten a chance to watch the documentary about this yet, but I'm curious to.
So first off, it's not on Roku. Just Watch is confused because it has the exact same name as a British TV show about true crime, It's I can. It's Catching a Killer is the name of the British TV show, and the name of the documentary. It's on YouTube in 2 parts. It's Catching a Killer, the Hasong serial killer, I think.
Okay.
But it's 90 minutes total, but it's edited like it was aired on TV, and it's in 2 parts, and you can find it in a playlist with both parts. Turn the volume down this so it doesn't open up. Catching a Killer has the Hasong. Come on, YouTube. What the fuck?
Yeah, so just as a side note, like, this is a case I will be investigating more and looking up documentaries and stuff, because I find this case fascinating. And I don't know how much of like a Wikipedia deep dive you did, but some of the stuff that came out later about the killer, and there was a copycat killer that they thought was the actual, like, it's fucking fascinating. This whole thing is something that, you know, kind of flew under the radar for me because I wasn't that familiar with it.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with this at all.
And
Catching
then, like,
a Killer,
learning about
the Hasong Murders.
Okay.
Is what it's called. It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Yeah, I will be checking it out
2
because we'll talk a little bit later about the.
I can send you the link to them too. Also, if you're turned off by this movie because it is subtitled, you're not gonna like the documentary.
Oh yeah. I will say, if people are traditionally kind of turned off by subtitles, give this movie a shot, because I think the storyline is so gripping, and the way that they present what was at the time, you know, an unsolved murder case, and just the way this movie progresses and the way it ends, I think you won't care. I think you will forget that you're like, just like me, I think you will forget that you're reading subtitles because you just get sucked in.
I was talking about this aspect with my wife earlier tonight. It's not like you're watching a Jackie Chan movie subtitled, where by reading the dialogue you're missing the parts that you came to see, right? The Jackie Chan parts, because you have to look at the dialogue. This is not like an action movie. It's not a high octane adrenaline rush. It is a based on a historical thing that happened. It's dramatized, obviously, because it is a movie. It is entertainment.
Dramatized with a bunch of drop kicks. Surprising amount of drop kicks in this movie.
That guy is obsessed with drop kicking people.
That guy,
and he's
just
so
shows
good
up
at it.
That guy just fucking like. You'll be at the dentist office just minding your own business. Out of nowhere, this guy will just fucking drop kick you into space. Like, the guy is insane at it. I'd do it too if I was that good at it. The guy's just legit at it, you know?
And what happens to him is justice in one way, dude. That's just the universe. The universe coming back at him.
He's like the dropkick equivalent of Icarus. He drop kicked too close to the sun.
Oh man.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. I also like not even that dude, but the Detective Park has a drop kick of his own on the other detective guy. Like, when he drop kicks him down the hill. I don't know why. Man, people love drop kicking people in this movie. It's like, man.
A lot of drop kicking happens in Korea, evidently.
If you take a drink every time a drop kick happens, you'll have a great evening. You'll be fucking depressed as hell because this movie is sad. This movie is so sad.
I feel like it's
so good.
I feel like we should also preface this with anything that we say about Korea, we're not talking about the Korean people. The government at the time, it was not a democracy. Yeah, I believe it. I don't know if it's a democracy now. I know that that's what the protests are in this movie, is when the people were wanting to become a democracy. And the government was oppressive. The police, it's kind of our complaints about the police now. Like, their police are considered part of the military at the time, and it was like a 5-star general or a 3-star general that was in charge of the police. That should not be a thing. The military should have no control over the police force.
Yeah, that's a terrifying thought. And and when that happens, you basically get Guantanamo Bay. You know, this police force, a few of them are legitimately, you know, torturing people into. I mean,
we see it in this movie.
Yeah, you see it in this movie, and the scary thing is just like how often that happened. There were apparently like several people in real life who had committed suicide after being berated and tortured into confessions from these police forces, and it's just terrifying.
Because they needed the arrest more than they needed to catch the guy.
Yeah, they needed this, like, because they constantly talk about, you know, like the reporters and the journalists, you know.
Yes.
It's all about like the PR. Like we gotta be seen as the guys who caught the killer, regardless of if it's him or not. You know,
so,
like,
something that I might have missed. Now, to be clear, I only managed to get through part 1 of the documentary, because the thing I told you was 45 minutes. I literally gave myself 45 minutes to watch it, and then found out, no, that's not it. And when I found it, it's 2 45-minute documentaries. So I got to watch part 1 before recording tonight.
Gotcha.
But it was talking about how it wasn't until like the 4th or 5th killing that it really got the media really got a hold of it, and there was like all this pressure that if the police force could not catch the killer, to resign their positions, because the public was angry, the government was angry because they're looking bad, and it's one guy, catch this one guy. Why don't you just catch him? Just catch him, Fivehead.
Just catch him. And like, it wasn't just catching a serial killer; it was catching the first known serial killer South Korea has ever
in a region of South Korea. That's the other thing too. To be clear, this is South Korea. We're probably gonna say Korea. In America, that refers to South Korea. North Korea is not Korea.
Completely different. Yeah. Completely different. Yeah.
So if you're not used to if you don't live in America, we distinguish them by Korea and North Korea. So we're gonna interchange Korea and South Korea probably. But this is in a region of South Korea that is horribly ill-equipped to handle something of this magnitude. They have no way to do forensics. They have no way to do any kind of DNA testing, which is relatively new at the time. They have no means of investigation. They are comparing fingerprints by hand with magnifying glass.
If we didn't say this originally happened in 1986.
1986, yeah.
Yeah. So one detail is the agonizing thought of having to wait for that forensic result to come back when you think that you've caught the guy. And though in real life they had sent it to Japan, they had not sent it to America. They had not sent it to America, but still the idea of having to wait for that result
in 1986
is just agonizing.
You're talking about mailing it to a place, and then it probably got on a boat or a plane, and then flew, and then testing happened, and then it had to be trucked to a place, and either got on a boat or a plane and came back and was trucked back. Like, they don't say in the movie how long it takes, and they didn't say in part 1 of the documentary how long that takes. That had to have been months to get back.
Yeah. Like probably like 2 months at the absolute earliest.
Yeah. The movie
insane.
The movie doesn't give a crazy timeline, a crazy detailed timeline, but the majority of what happens in the movie is like between 86 and 91.
Okay.
And yeah, like this police force has never had to deal with anything like this. They're not trained. They don't have the manpower because the Korean Games, the documentary refers to it as, I don't know if it's the Olympics or just something that they do on their own. Again, uncultured American. But the Korean Games was happening. The president was there. So the police force and military was all mobilized because it had been threatened by North Korea. So there are no spare men. There's no one they can send to help with the case. They can't get like a full police force on this case because there's just too much stuff going on diplomatically with North Korea at the time. And that's on top of all the demonstrations, all the protests wanting to democratize. And it just left this small town police force with literally just 3 men on the case.
Yeah. And because of the way that the military was involved and just how shady these, officers were. There was some fucked up shit happening with these interrogations where they were actively, now now we're going to talk about some of the stuff in the movie as if it's, fact. It is all based on stuff that happened, but it's
based on a play. It's based on a play based on the facts.
Yeah. So there's some grains of truth to it, but it is dramatized. It's not all exactly word for word, but it's the gist of it. And based on historical record, there were really, really shady things happening with, like I said, the Guantanamo Bay style, torture, forced confessions and shit going on. And some of that is like, it's hard to watch because, like you said, like all they care about is getting the guy, whether he actually did it or not. They need the win. They want the case to be to be done. They're tired of the public scrutiny, and they didn't care. Yeah. So my question is, okay, so Detective Sue, who is from he's from out of this, like not from the rural town where the murders are happening. He came in from Seoul, I believe. Is he based on a real guy who came from, from the capital or from out of town? Like, did you learn any more about the specifics as far as like these characters, as far as whether they're based on actual people or not? Because I haven't. Everything that I have learned is about the killer side of it and not the cop side of it.
Yeah, so, everything I read is on the killer side, and everything that I watched in part 1 just talks about how, even today there would be just droves of police on this case, and all they talk about is that there was 3. They don't talk about if any of them were from Seoul or specifically or anything. They said that there's basically no backup, no reinforcements, no one that can come in, but they never actually said if one of them came in from Seoul.
Okay.
So that might be more artistic liberty for one reason or another. Can we talk about something before we move on? You mentioned it, and I have it on my okay. I was about to say I have it on my list. I'm not gonna lie. My list is literally just a Google Doc with the title of this movie written down, and the rest of it's blank. I opened it in order to write notes and just never took my eyes off the screen. So
same.
I ended up not writing down anything. So my list is all mental, which many people would agree I'm mental to begin with. But I had on my list that change. Why the change of sending the forensics to America, Jeff? What an odd choice that literally doesn't matter to the story.
The only thing I can think of is he was trying to basically
get American audiences interested. America, they mention America. I'll watch it.
I think it is dramatic shorthand to further explain why it's taking so long, because I think a lot of people would kind of like not take into account like you were talking about how the agonizing amount of logistical problems it would take to get that report back in 1986 in South Korea. I think it was just shorthand to basically say like this is gonna take a fucking minute and it's gonna fucking suck. I think it was just shorthand.
The only thing that I could come up with, and it makes no sense, I'm not saying that this is my opinion on it, but the only connection I could draw is when the initial detective we start out with literally tells him, if you want to be a super cop, go to America and join the FBI. And then later was sending a thing to America when in real life it was sent to Japan. And the only thing I can think of is like, is this a weird callback to that conversation at the bar? Like, why the random change?
I think it's just a combination of like all the above. I think it's to further show this is going to take forever and it's going to be it. I
don't want to get hung up on this, but my point of why it kind of is weird to me is it doesn't help the story to change it to America. It doesn't hurt the story for it to be in Japan. It literally changes nothing.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I don't think it was.
I just thought it was an odd
ulterior
detail.
motive. It is an odd detail. I don't think it had an ulterior motive. I think it was just kind of shorthand consolidating aspects of the plot. They had referenced the FBI several times, and maybe they just felt like
maybe we should involve the FBI then.
maybe we'll involve that.
Is Bong Joon-ho a big fan of the FBI?
I seriously doubt it because, dude, he already had this view of
right
law enforcement in 2003 when this, like I said before, like this is incredibly ahead of its time with its take on the police. And this is, this is literally 20 years ago with the mindset of like where we are now as far as, not really trusting the bulk of law enforcement as a society, like, man, it's weird. This movie like could not be more timely 20 years later.
Yeah. At least in American politics.
Yeah, in American politics for sure. Man. And watching it with like that in the back of your mind just adds so much more weight to it than what's already there. You're just like, fuck, dude. Like it's tough. It's weird. It's one of those things where the subject matter is so heavy and wears on your soul so much, but you cannot fucking turn away. It's so investing. Like, fuck, dude.
It's gripping. Like,
it really is.
That's not a descriptor I use because that's an eye roll descriptor to me whenever I read a review of something. But it is literally the definition of gripping to me.
Yeah.
It literally grabbed me. My phone just went to sleep and nothing was ever written on that blank Google Doc.
Same. It was like nothing else existed in the universe but me and the television screen when this was ongoing.
Yes.
You're so like, oh, that's another thing too. Is like the pacing of this is incredibly modern.
Yes.
The pacing of this is fucking flawless to me. Like, what's crazy too is like when you think about it, Ron, it's like a slow burn that never feels like a slow burn. It's so just. It's hard to explain just how invested I was in it, and as I'm watching it, it's like this movie is over 2 hours long, and it feels like a lean 90-minute movie to me.
Yeah,
it just flies by, but at the same time, like when he's trying to get across, like how grueling the time is for them, like when they're just waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, and like they like when Detective Sue is calling and they're like, hey, stop calling. And he's like, I'm calling because it's important,
Yeah.
And it's just like putting yourself in their shoes. It's heartbreaking, just putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about how grueling that situation would be. Now, obviously it's dramatized, but
right.
I think what
it is a movie, it is entertainment, and that's important to keep in mind when talking about it in the context of this movie. The thing that's interesting, you talked about him, literally yelling at the radio station guy, I keep calling because it's important. And like the radio station people not keeping the postcards and stuff, though they specifically asked them to. One thing that was interesting is I think it was like the 5th or 6th death that they finally started acknowledging that this is like the work of one guy that's not going to stop, that these are all related.
Mm-hmm.
And like the news media didn't even start covering things till like the 5th. So only people in Hsong knew about the killers and them being linked because it's a small enough town that in the documentary, this one guy that saw the killer face to face, he talked about how everyone in this town literally knows everyone. Everyone walks past each other, works past each other. They're all related or intermarried somehow. It's a small enough town that everybody knows everybody. So they all have an idea what's going on. Anyone outside of town is just like, wow, there's going to be a lot of people dying lately. And that's it.
It's
this is their first serial killer, basically. So, no one's really thinking anything of it. Like, why do you keep wanting this? Why do you want this so bad? We'll have it when we have it. We want it so bad because, one, there's pressure on us to resign if we don't get it. Everyone's telling us what an embarrassment we are. The public is getting incredibly angry, and people are fucking dying.
I just want to quickly, too, so we have to talk about, I think one of the things that specifically the direction and the cinematography just like knocks out of the fucking park in this movie is So when you think of like serial killer thrillers, right? The settings you're typically thinking of are like people being tracked through the woods, people being tracked down like a back alley in New York. But the effect and terror that they get across with just a field.
Yes.
Like that scene when early on, when one of the first victims is walking down the side of the field and the killer stands up slowly and then retreats back down slowly, is one of like the creepiest scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just a guy in a field.
That's the same one that you hear him whistling along with her singing, right?
Yeah, the whistling is just so creepy. Like, man, that but you get what I'm saying though, like that's so simple and they have so little to work with the setting, and they get so much out of it with it, just like the simplicity of it's just like there's nowhere to hide, you know. It's just a field. It is such a rare setting for this type of story that it makes it like so like ethereal at the same time, because it doesn't feel like your traditional serial killer movie, just because yeah, like the crime scene investigations, like, you know, like will feel something out of like, you know, Seven, which I think was an influence on this movie for sure. But man, like, did you also get that as far as just like how bizarre and otherworldly this very, very rural setting is for this type of movie?
Which is funny because my understanding is that that's basically common in that area. I mean, that's just what you see. That's what everything around you is. So
yeah,
that's what that town is known for. So it's funny that you and I are sitting here talking about like how kind of alien that landscape is, when that is every day for these people.
Yeah, it's every day for them, but it's alien for this type of movie.
Yeah,
because that's something you never see.
It's always
in this type of movie.
Deep in the woods or
a back alley in a city where no one's around.
Yeah,
you know?
concrete jungle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing also the thing about Korean, Chinese, Japanese films, they all have this look about them that I love. And I don't know if that is due to just the technology being used, if it's a cultural thing, because, you know, American movies kind of all look a certain way. British movies all look a certain way. But
you're talking about like the heavy film grain kind of look to it?
The heavy film grain, the dark saturation of the color. It's got a very specific look to it that I've seen in a lot of Asian films to begin with. But there's something that it lends to this movie. It's very... You know what it kind of smacks of to me? It feels like they're playing on the way like Korean, Chinese, and Japanese movies usually look. They're playing on it the way they did in Batman the Animated Series by using dark paper instead of white paper. It feels like they're using the graininess and the saturation of the movie kind of against your senses, because there is a impending sense of dread in the way this movie is filmed. Like you know what is happening, and each time we see the next victim just walking their merry way home, with the way everything looks, with how dark everything, it literally feels like you're just standing out in a dark field naked watching this movie.
Yeah, it feels so raw.
Yeah.
That the scene when they go and talk to the lady who is sick and has like they look like they're in a slum in Gotham City.
Yeah.
You know, but you think about it, you know, like that's actually part of the setting there. You know, it is an incredibly rural part of South Korea in 1986. You know,
by the way,
a lot of these families probably don't even have like air conditioning.
Oh, they absolutely don't.
Yeah, it's. And just like to think about, like that's your setting when you're trying, and not to mention it says like it does, it becomes like a part of the plot, you know, as far as like he only kills people when it's raining, and it's like they're already like struggling so much to get evidence, and when you realize like, you know, like a lot of the evidence they could get is literally washing away.
Yeah.
And it's just like such an impossible task for these guys.
No, to give you an idea, the documentary talks about how in this region at this time, bathrooms were basically like like side by side bathrooms that were literally an outhouse apart from the house. And so they didn't have indoor plumbing for the bathroom. There's absolutely, I can tell you right now, there's going to be no air conditioner because the way the killer got in to kill the poor girl that was killed in her room, the criminologist literally talks about how doors lock with a single little latch. It's just a loop on one side, and we've all seen it on like sheds and stuff. That little latch that comes down into the loop. That's what locks your door, and the doors are made out of paper. So he just stuck his hand through the door and unlatched the door.
It's
like that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is just it's so tragic.
Yeah.
You know that they could barely defend themselves because their police force doesn't even have the technology. Like the regular, like the regular day-to-day people, just going about their lives, like you said, they don't even have indoor plumbing. It's so hopeless that it's so like, let's talk about
one thing I wanted to say a minute ago before we move too far away from it is you mentioned how it looks like a slum in Gotham City in that one part they're at. It's funny you say that because one of the things I would have written down is that Detective Park is basically Bullock. He's the Korean Bullock.
He really is. And I wanted to quickly talk about him specifically. So let's run in the cast and then talk about him specifically. So Song Kang-ho is Detective. Forgive me for the names, but Song Kang-ho is Detective Park. Kim Sang-hyung is Detective. They call him Sue, but it's interesting. It's spelled differently in like the IMDb cast versus the subtitles within the movie on Apple, which is interesting. I don't know. You have Roe-ha Kim as Detective Cho, Jae-ho Song as their basically like police chief, and then you have God, I'm so sorry.
Buckle in.
Seo-hie-ko as Officer Kwon. But so Song Kang-ho, who plays Detective Park, is also the guy who played the main character in Parasite.
Okay.
And he is fucking amazing in Parasite especially, but he's really good in this too. I absolutely love, and I think it is like the gist of the movie, and I think one thing that like I talked about earlier about how Joon-ho absolutely had to have seen and been influenced by Seven, but the fact that you see the two leads, these two detectives, and their kind of personalities change over time throughout this case.
Yes. And
how like just devastating and tragic and but like it like inescapable it is to pay attention to like their character development as far as like Detective Park, who is the piece of shit scumbag, like literally planting evidence at the beginning of this movie.
Yes.
And to see him, how he's changed by this case versus how Sue is changed by the case. So it's interesting. They become more like the other throughout the duration of the case. Because Detective Park realizes that if they don't catch the right guy, this isn't going to stop.
Yeah.
It no longer becomes like a one-off bullshit
he starts
minor
to
crime.
care after a while.
He starts to care because he realizes that these are not. So if he, puts away the wrong guy for a bullshit one-off case, it isn't going to be a repetitive thing. It doesn't matter to him as much. But when he realizes that if he doesn't put away this guy, women are going to continue to die, he becomes more invested and starts to look at it like Sue does early on in the movie as your kind of traditional cop as far as, like the good cop.
Yeah.
He's trying to, like Sue early on in the film, is presented as the kind of like what you would think of as the kind of traditional kind of super cop. He's really good at what he does. He wants to put away the guy. He's incredibly motivated. And Detective Park is just like the shitbag, like the Bullock, like worse than Bullock though, because he's literally fucking planting evidence and torturing people.
At the end of the day, in fact, I just watched that episode with my kids recently. Bullock does actually care and follows the law at the end of the day. He's just a shitbag about it.
He's just an asshole.
In fact, Gordon has a line in that episode where he tells Batman, he's like, look, Bullock may be hard to work with. He's hard to like, but he's a good cop.
Yeah, he's a good cop. And to see them like flip and become more like the other person throughout the movie, like by the end when Sue is just so we didn't talk about at one point they believe they've caught the guy. They're like 99.9% sure they've caught the guy.
Great
and they're
scene.
just waiting. And they're just waiting for the DNA sample to come back to confirm it. So they're watching this guy 24/7 that they think is the guy. Sue happens to be the guy watching him. He falls asleep on the job because he's just so run down because of how exhausted they are from how many years they've been on this case by now. You said it was like 5 years worth of time, right?
As far as something like that. It's like it's like 86 to 91.
Yeah, it's been several years, maybe more like months. Like you said, they're kind of vague with the time passing in the movie. I think intentionally, just to kind of like put yourself in their shoes as far as like time would begin to disappear. You know, that you're so invested and you're so like singularly motivated on the job that, you know, like time would just melt away because all that exists is the case and trying to catch the killer. So it's been so much time, and he's happens to be the one watching him when he falls asleep for just a second and he gets away, and the killer, you know, you don't know at the end of it, but they believe that because he got away for a second, he's able to kill again. And Sue obviously blames himself. And Sue is ready to just fucking Frank Castle him at the end.
Yeah.
Regardless of... So what happens when they actually get the DNA result back is it's inconclusive. And they say that it's the DNA says it's not him.
So real fast about that scene. When it comes back, did you have to pause to read?
I rewound it for a second to like read the entirety of it,
right?
But my eyes kind of jumped to like it being inconclusive as far as it not being him.
I had to speed read that paragraph because it's funny. The only part of the movie that's in English is the report from the FBI on paper, but the part that's important is the bottom two sentences, which pop up as a subtitle in Korean at the bottom of the screen, and they give you just enough time to read those two sentences. And I was fucking speed reading that entire paragraph to get to the important part because I can't read Korean.
Yeah.
So, I was just like, I don't know why. I can pause it at any time. I can rewind it at any time. But for some reason, just, okay, I read it. And that's about the amount of time they gave you to read it.
Yeah, they really did.
You know, I get it. It was made for Korean audiences, and they highlight the part for them, but they didn't highlight it on screen. They just put the subtitle in Korean on screen. So I was like, "What to say? What to say? What to say? What to say?" Yeah,
yeah. Because, God, dude,
I know what it's going to say, but I need to read it. You know.
Yeah, and you're just like on the fucking edge of your seat because the last like 20 minutes of this movie is just like fucking nuts.
It's a different movie almost in a good way.
Yeah.
But it earns the right to go into different territory because it slowly built up to this ending.
Yeah, and it comes to a head as far as like the development of the characters because Sue has become what Park used to be, you know, willing to do just terrible things, you know, in order to basically just get the job done. He is so like he's basically like just so worn down and broken that he views this as the guy he's going to take him out regardless of whether he did it or not, just in the chance that he is,
right? Because
at that point he you know, he's just like Park used to be, you know, he doesn't care. He just needs, you know, the case to be closed. You know, he needs it to be over whether he did it or not. And Park at that time has just flipped the opposite direction and actively stops him from trying to kill. You know, he ends up shooting at him a few times, and you don't actually know at first whether he shot him or not. And then he gets up, and you know the guy runs away, showing that he didn't get shot by Sue, but you don't know at first. But that scene is so harrowing, dude. It like you said, it's fucking gripping, and you know most movies don't earn that adjective like you said earlier, but this movie totally does.
Yeah, there's a couple of notes that's important to note here. Korean audiences would know this. That's why it's hardly mentioned in the movie, because this is a very important time in history, not just for the murders, but politically of what's going on in Korea at the time. And a lot of the irony of what Sue is doing, he thinks that, Park and Cho are just awful, awful people, scumbags. That there's everything wrong with the police when he first gets there. And he kind of slowly becomes them. And what this movie is kind of about is the police brutality at the time, which is what a lot of the protests that are happening in the movie and on TV in the movie and stuff are about, is the police brutality and wanting to become a democracy. So police brutality plays a big part even in the background, and I think they call it out explicitly like one time in the movie because Korean audiences would know this already. It wouldn't need to be called out to them.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's interesting to call out about the killer is I found this out in middle school because the school I went to, we had a bunch of exchange students from South Korea, and they would talk about it. But there is mandatory military service. I think it was 2 years.
Okay.
That everybody has to go through. So literally anyone that could be the killer would have military training.
Oh man, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, that's the one. Then they're talking about how there's no evidence, everything's clean. There's like certain types of knots being tied, and it takes like special things, like the one dude's hands couldn't possibly tie those knots with that hands and stuff. They have military training. The way that shows him stalking the lady in the trees and stuff, he would have military training because it's mandatory in South Korea.
Also like to your point earlier when you were talking about how like everybody knows everybody, and just like that mindset of it can't be anyone because everyone knows everybody, but it has to be someone.
Exactly.
And just like you can trust and at the same time not trust anybody. It's fucking haunting to think about, dude. Like you realize like why this has been in the public mind, for so long, is because it's terrifying and it's heartbreaking, and some of like the crazy stuff we haven't talked about. Like let's talk about some of like the real life case stuff as far as what's happened in the last few years. Is had you done much digging? I know you said you watched like the first half of one of the documentary things on YouTube, but have you read about what happened just about like 4 years ago with this case?
Yes.
So yeah, let's talk about it.
This is insane.
It's absolutely crazy. So let's see. I'm finding so more than 13 years later after the film. So it's actually about more than 16.
I was going to say 16 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Wikipedia page is dating it to when the statute of limitations had ended for the last known victim. So more than 13 years later after the statute of limitations had been reached for the last known victim, on September 18th, 2019, police announced that a man in his 50s, Lee Choon-jae, had been identified as a suspect in the killings. He was identified after DNA from the underwear of one victim was matched with his, and subsequent DNA testing linked him to 4 of the other unsolved serial murders. At the time he was identified, he was already serving a life sentence in prison in Busan for the rape and murder of his sister-in-law. Lee initially denied any involvement in the serial murders, but on October 2nd, 2019, police announced he had confessed to killing 14 people, including all 10 serial murders. 2 of the additional 4 murders happened in Suwon, and the other 2 happened in Shangju. As of October 2019, details about the victims have not been released because the investigation is ongoing. In addition to the murders, Lee also confessed to more than 30 rapes and attempted rapes. After Lee's arrest, Bong Joon-ho, the director of this film, commented, "When I made the film, I was very curious, and I also thought a lot about this murderer. I wondered what he looked like." He later added, "I was able to see a photo of his face, and I think I need more time to really explain my emotions from that. But right now, I just like to applaud the police force for their endless effort to find the culprit." The killer, Lee, had watched the film while incarcerated, stating, "I just watched it as a movie. I had no feeling or emotion towards the movie."
Which is
when I read that is one of the most chilling sentences I've ever read in my life. I'm not gonna lie. It actually like makes your blood run cold.
That is literally the definition of a psychopath.
Just insane, dude.
Yeah.
I am so glad he was already incarcerated, because could you imagine them being able to find this guy but not being able to do anything about it because of the statute of limitations?
Have you seen the police sketch?
I have not.
They show the police. I mean, it's most of the opening to the documentary is this police sketch, like tiled on the screen. This guy looks very much like that police sketch, the photo they have of him.
Okay.
Which was a photo from 1983, I believe Wikipedia is saying here. So this is what he looked at 3 years before the murders happened, and that police sketch is identical.
What's also crazy is I don't know if you have you seen much about the copycat killer?
No.
The copycat killer is also fascinating. So let me find the actual the Wikipedia pages that I had found about the copycat killer is also really, really interesting. So basically there were, okay, here it is. So it's the wrongful conviction of Yoon Sung-yeo. So this guy was sentenced to life in prison, basically, and was believed to have been the actual killer. But they were able to figure out that he was a copycat killer and had made false confessions about the killings.
Right.
Basically, he copied the MO because the MO was so well known throughout the country that he was able to basically recreate what the original killer had done in order to be the copycat killer and kind of take credit for it. And they eventually had to have. Oh, that is crazy. Rhonda just sent me in Discord the sketch he had.
Yeah, it is. Even the mouth, like the expression in the eyes, like it is literally the exact same expression on the face.
So in December 2019, a police agency who basically was like a South Korean equivalent of internal affairs, booked and charged 8 of the original investigators with abuse of power and illegal detention for allegedly physically abusing Yoon when he was a suspect, forcing him to make a false confession and falsifying investigative documents. So not only was he a copycat killer, but he was also, through police brutality, forced into making false confessions.
Which makes sense because they were so hard after getting an arrest.
Yeah. So the court accepted Yoon's plea for a retrial in January 2020. The final court hearing was held on November 2nd, 2020, where Lee stood as a witness confessing to the murder and describing the crime scene. Yoon Sung-yeo was acquitted of murder on 17 December 2020 after the retrial court accepted that Yoon was innocent all along and finding Lee guilty of Bak's murder despite the expiration of the statute of limitations. Dude, this is so fascinating to me. I can't imagine watching this movie and being able to kind of deep dive into all this and not just be absolutely gripped by how crazy every permutation of the story, with the copycat killer and the police brutality angles of it, and just the fact that this movie happened before this was solved.
Yes.
And the ending of the movie is so interesting. When you take into account when it was made, and it would be 16 years later before they actually officially figured out who it was.
Right.
So when this movie was made, there was a decent chance no one was ever gonna know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of it is dramatized, obviously, but I really think that he took the kind of nuts and bolts of the story, and what it is it's trying to put how would you react, and how can a person react when you're put in this impossible situation trying to catch this guy in what is essentially 1800s level technology, with the way that, like you said, they have outhouses, they don't have indoor plumbing, they don't have air conditioning. It's you have to send your DNA result away to a different country to get it back months or weeks later. And I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine being in these guys' shoes.
Real quick, I just found one thing I was looking for. I might have misheard you, but I just wanted to clarify in case I didn't. He had also confessed to the copycat crime. There was not the dude that went to prison. He was completely innocent, because that's what the first part of the documentary is about.
Okay. Yeah.
He hadn't killed anyone at all. He was completely innocent. And this shitbag, what's his name? Lee Choon-jae, he had confessed to even the copycat crime. He says here he confessed to 4 undisclosed murders not originally in the original list of crimes. Hang on. Not originally included in the original list of crimes. Why does that sound weird to read out loud? That seems oddly worded. But he confessed to 4 undisclosed murders that they didn't know about, plus all 10 serial murders and the copycat. He confessed to all of it. So that brings the total to what, 15?
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah, it's everything about this case is fascinating, including the fact that the government. So this movie sparked a reinvestigation into the case, basically because the public got interested in it again, and there was new technology available, and they extended the statute of limitations specifically to do this because we were coming up on the statute of limitations for the final victim.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually extended the statute of limitations. Nothing came of it. So they reverted the statute of limitations. And then when he confessed, they convicted him of them anyway, despite the statute of limitations, which is both an odd sense of justice and a human rights violation at the same time.
Now, Wikipedia credits it as the only kill he was officially convicted of was the sister-in-law.
Yes, that is
but
true.
He had confessed to 14 of them. So he was already in prison for life because of the murder of his sister-in-law. Yeah, it's hard to like keep track of because of how fucking crazy this all is. I don't know how I hadn't really like heard of this.
Yeah, I had never heard of this before this movie, and
it's absolutely insane.
I find myself doing deep dives on it now.
Yeah,
I found a few podcasts. One of them is a Filipina host that does true crime, and she does deep dives. She even says in the opening to the episode covering this that she has to release fewer episodes because of the amount of research in between she had underestimated. This is like her 4th episode is this case. I think I would take this on in podcast form, true crime podcast form, maybe at like the 5-year mark because of the amount of research you would have to do to straighten out the tangled bullshit that is this case.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. The beginning of this movie, this movie has odd yet dark moments of levity to it that are kind of genius. Can we talk about that for a minute? I feel like I had originally stopped you in your tracks. Was there something you needed to finish saying before we switch gears?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm kind of all over the place tonight. I haven't had a lot of sleep and I've been working outside and I've got the sun crazy. Also known as dehydration. So the opening to this movie, we see no one can simply walk down a hill. Like, the cops are so inept in this town that, like, 3 or 4 different people, when we cut the camera to, just tumble down the hill when they try to walk down it. They can't even walk down a goddamn hill. Things like that. And that's the beginning right after we see the body. This movie opens with the body of the first body found, but second victim, right? They didn't know about the first one. Who knows? But, it's a very serious, dark thing. And then when we cut to the police swarming the area, everyone is just comically rolling down this hill like it's a Three Stooges thing. But it's a dark note also because you're the people investigating and you're tampering with evidence. You're like destroying evidence. You're destroying the scene. You're falling around all over the place. Like, it just shows how inexperienced they are and just how like unable to cope with things they are. Even a hill, right? We have later when we're deep in the trenches of this thing. No pun intended. Where fucking Detective Harvey Park Bullock is his big idea is, since we're not finding pubic hair, he must be a baldy, so he goes to a bathhouse.
Oh my, yeah, I forgot about that.
Like,
so
what the fuck are you doing, bro?
is okay. So one of the things that Soapey actually mentioned about this, when he picked this, was he was talking about if we could kind of within this movie kind of like see any kind of like inclination on like the future success of Bong Joon-ho as a director. A lot of that like juxtaposition of tone is actually in Parasite as well, where like Parasite will have something that is just like absolutely fucking devastating, but then 5 minutes later you can have something that is like cartoonishly over the top, and by the end of the day you're like, on paper it shouldn't work, but at the end of the day it does.
Well, the reason it works is because it's not aimless. They're showing just how inept and how unprepared someone like Detective Park is for a case of this magnitude, right? Like, they don't have the proper training. They're not usually even concerned with solving the crime. Just plant some evidence or tamper with some evidence, find a poor schmuck, brainwash them into confessing, and throw them in prison. Case closed.
He also within the movie, when after his whole baldy thing falls apart, he goes to a shaman and is doing the spell of, with the blood on the parchment, this will reveal the face of the. He's like doing like voodoo.
Well, before that happens, he's like, "You're not going to sell me that talisman." As soon as she pulls it out, and it cuts to him with it on the ground as they're pouring. Like, what the fuck? And he's complaining he can't get reimbursed for the bathhouse.
Yeah,
but like, even the sergeant is like, how would you even test something like that? Right? Like, how would you even investigate something like that? And then it hard cuts to him at the bathhouse. But
just staring at people.
What I mean by the fact that it's not aimless is because this type shit happens within context of the story, and it is happening with a purpose to show you just how unprepared they are for this case. And that is what makes it this really dark humor, and you combine that with the overall tone of the movie, the fact that this is a real thing that happened, and again, just the look of the film. You combine all those things together, and like this humor, and like you said, say it for me, juxtaposition.
Juxtaposition.
I don't know why I can't say it.
It's late. Forgive us.
It really is. But the tone, the mismatched tone. How about that? Works
First try.
Because it's hard for me to even put into words to describe this. It's a genius way to bring levity to a dark subject while still hammering home the point you're trying to make, right? Like all the moments that we do get with him at the bathhouse, him at the shaman, people literally just one after the other rolling down a hill like goddamn Sonic the Hedgehog, just end over end. It's a dark form of comedy that fits the tone because it is still showing just how bad these people are at their jobs.
And it also just shows like his reaction with like the types of investigations he's doing when he's going to the links of the Baldy investigation and the fucking like magical spells he's trying to do and shit. This case is so like cataclysmically awful. Your brain can't help but just kind of like jump to absurdities because they can't comprehend like the darkness of it.
Yeah.
It's so out of left field for them. And you think you said it like really well. Like,
I don't think I've said anything well tonight. Juxtaposition did it.
Nailed it.
In the show now.
We'll fix it in post. We won't fix it in post.
No, we won't. We're too lazy.
But man. But my only point was a lot of that juxtaposition, Ron,
Fucker.
in tone, as far as like him balancing something absurd with something very, very deep is something that would continue all the way into Parasite, because Parasite has a lot of that same type of like, on paper, it should not work at all, and he kind of finds a way to make it work, and it's just like the balancing act is crazy.
Now, what's interesting,
and we have to have Parasite on the show eventually, just to kind of like as like kind of like a follow up to this, and just kind of like track, because Parasite is great. I think I might like this better than Parasite.
Mm-hmm. You had warned me when I expressed interest in Parasite that I may not care for it. If it's anything in the vein of this, I'm probably going to be all about it.
I see. I hadn't. I had known that how much like this would land with you. With like now knowing that this landed with you like really, really well, and you genuinely love this, I think you will really like Parasite. I don't know if it will be better, because this is just such like a fucking masterclass of tone, and I think also just how fascinating like the real life aspect of it. Like you can finish the movie and go deep diving just to learn about the case, and it's just like the whole thing is so fascinating. Both from so it's also interesting is like he has these moments of levity, and it never feels disrespectful either. Like that takes a lot of courage to even introduce those aspects into the film, especially as like an early on in your career filmmaker. And this is one of his like first movies, right? I'll fact check that, but I think it was one of his first movies.
And all of those moments are also used as almost a political what's the word I'm looking for, Jeff? Why am I falling apart near the end of the episode?
It's all good. It's all good. We're almost there.
I can't think of the word, but it's almost a political statement, because it's always the police that have these really idiotic, like, baldy moments, right?
Satire, is that the word you're looking for?
Yeah.
This is his second feature-length movie.
Jesus Christ,
that's fucking insane.
Also, the whole baldy conversation he has with the chief and him at the bathhouse lends a whole new meaning for me for a scene in Bleach, when someone just runs around calling this person baldy, 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 baldy over and over and over and over.
Oh, that's great.
Bobby knows. He borrowed all my Bleach DVDs.
Yeah. But just insane directing. Just the fact that this is his second movie. There's so much confidence. Like you can really see like another movie of his that I really need to watch that has also gotten a lot of buzz is it Okja the
I've seen the poster and I've heard of it.
Yeah, that's
I've heard a lot of mixed things about that one, but I could see it being mixed with an American audience if it's anything like this movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like I really appreciate the fact that he just kind of like swings for the fences with this stuff. He's not afraid to be there's a lot of strangeness to this movie, and he's not afraid to add in like the Baldy investigation.
Right.
I like that confidence of.
I have a question for you.
Going off script with it. Go ahead.
If you gave Bong Joon-ho a superhero movie to direct, what would you give him?
John Constantine.
Ooh, that's a good answer.
That's what I would pick. What about you?
First thing that popped in my head was The Question.
Oh, that'd be good too. Like that kind of noir.
Yeah. Aspect. I know that's almost typecasting because of this movie.
I don't care. I want it.
But it fits, right?
Yeah. Man. This movie, dude.
This movie made us pull out the fucking question. This movie fucked me up,
dude. I'm not gonna lie.
No.
I was just staring at my also like that final scene when
it fades to black.
It's what is it? Is it like 17 years later? Park, it's basically like an epilogue. He is no longer a cop. Like this case just kind of broke him. He's no longer able to be a cop. He's like they show what he is. I forget what his new career is, but he's no longer in law enforcement.
Which, by the way, is a subtle way of saying the serial killer won. Right? Like he broke the police. He's not a police officer anymore.
He's no longer a police officer.
Detective. Sorry.
Very much homaging the ending of Seven, actually. Now that I think about it. So it shows Park in the like 17 years in the future. he is traveling on like a business trip, and he stops at the location where he discovered the first body they had found, and a little girl asked him like what's he doing, and she talks about how coincidentally she had seen another person, an ordinary looking person, looking in the exact same spot, and had remarked about how he had done something there a long time ago.
He was reminiscing about something, yeah.
And the movie just
I
ends
believe
like
it specifically uses the word reminiscing about something he did here long ago.
Yeah, and he asks her. He immediately goes into cop mode. He asks her like, "Hey, what did he look like?" And she says, "He did just like an ordinary guy." And it just ends, on that running theme of his kind of ongoing. So at the very beginning of the movie, Park is all about his. I can look into the eyes of a guy and know if he's the guy. I can tell the criminal from the non-criminal just by staring into his eyes, and like with it ending on him just like a close-up of his reaction, and his acting in that scene is like mesmerizing. It's so good.
When I saw Avengers Endgame, there is a time jump of 5 years in that movie. And when the screen goes black after Thor walks away from the camera, the screen fades to black, the number 5 fades in on screen, and you could hear a fucking pin drop in that theater.
Yeah,
and then when the word years fades in, the entire audience audibly gasped at the same time. And what brought me back to that is when this movie fades, and when it fades back in, it has a fade out and a fade in, but at the bottom of the screen is 2003. I made an audible noise when 2003 faded in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm unfamiliar with this case. I'm unfamiliar with this movie, the story. Yeah. I didn't know they hadn't caught the guy.
Me neither. I'm so glad I didn't know anything about it, because it made it even more gripping.
Yeah.
To be finding out that it's not exactly what happened, but to find out that at that time, it was an ongoing investigation. It was no longer like a known fact about a serial killer who was caught. It was a cold case.
Yeah.
To like figure that out in real time along with the movie is a crazy way to experience it, and I'm glad that we kind of went in not knowing anything.
I think when it came in, I did something like I made like an audible noise in place of a gasp when that faded in at the bottom, and he's no longer a cop, and we moved on into the epilogue. A theme throughout the actual investigation in real life was that anyone who had any kind of lead on him, their only description of him was he was just an ordinary looking guy. Like there was nothing that stood out about him. He just looked like your average ordinary dude.
Yeah.
And that is and that is a thing in this movie that they keep hearing is he just looks like an ordinary guy. And when that little girl basically implies that she brushed up against Satan himself a couple of days earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, to know that he's still out there.
Yeah, and that he's doing the same thing Park is doing, but on different sides of it, right? Like, he's coming back and reminiscing about something he did here a long time ago. And Park is there lamenting something he did here a long time ago. So it's very interesting the way this movie balances everything. There is this hidden dark force in this movie that we never see, but we fucking hate the guy so much for a character we never see or interact with. It's insane how many buttons this movie can push on the audience.
Yeah, another like buzzword kind of movie adjective that is overused to the point of usually having no meaning is like chilling.
Yes.
This movie is legitimately chilling when you watch it, especially if you go into it not knowing anything about it. Like, fuck, dude.
When
like I said, this movie fucked me up. I was just like sitting there, just kind of like, we go along for like that, especially like with the epilogue with Park. You're just like, fuck, dude. Like, did you really get away?
Was literally depressed at the end of this movie when the screen faded to black. I literally just kind of sat here for a moment, and then when the credits were in full swing, I watched it in my office next to my computer. I literally just pulled up the internet and started researching this thing while the credits are going, which did not help my mental state. That did
I
not.
did the exact same thing. I did the exact same thing. Yeah, I was on
do not
Wikipedia as
recommend
the
you
credits.
do that.
Also what's going on with the credits is just like the field.
Yeah.
And
the scarecrow.
Yeah. Fuck, man.
The scarecrow talisman, it's described as on Wikipedia.
Yeah, this movie is something else, and for it to be a second movie.
Yeah.
Good God. Man. I am now I really, really liked Parasite. I love this. Like I'm kind of like all in. I got to check out more of his stuff now. Just to see.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah. Was there anything else with Memories of Murder that you? By the way, thank you, Soapey, for making us watch this, because Jesus Christ, this movie is probably one of the better things we've covered.
If
I would say
there is no real way to describe this movie to anyone, if you had described this movie to me, I probably would have been like, "Oh, that sounds interesting," and never watched it. So I am very thankful that Soapey brought this movie to our attention and used our own forces against us and forced us to watch this movie, because I probably never would have checked it out, just because, I'm lazy about things. I'm like, oh yeah, it sounds interesting, but I never would have gotten to it. And I am so happy that I sat down and watched it.
Yeah, it's great.
I paid money to watch it, and I do not regret it.
Yeah, I can't fathom ever watching it again.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like it is just so like heavy on your soul. As I think it makes it so. Imagine too, you and I were able to watch the movie, go online, and see that the guy was caught eventually.
Yes.
If we were in 2003, if we were retroactively watching this when it was still a cold case, can you imagine watching this movie, going online, and realizing the guy was never fucking caught?
Yeah.
Like, just that sitting in the back of your mind is just like it was for these cops. Just like it is for cops and detectives in real life every single day. You could catch 100 killers, but it's the one that you didn't that would be in the back of your mind for eternity.
Yeah.
And, just that constant feeling of like failure. And you see it all, dude, like you see it all over Park's face. Like Sang-kyung in that final scene is so good at conveying just like the shock of realizing that this girl had just stumbled upon him coincidentally, just a little while earlier,
and he just missed him.
He just missed him. He's still out there. He, like you said, the bad guy won. He got away. It's like, fuck, dude. It's such a heavy and
then you
ending,
add to all of that this was real.
That it's real. It would be haunting if it wasn't real.
Yeah.
And that extra layer of it being based on a true story, just it's bonkers, man. Like, yeah. What was the name of the podcast that you found about it? Because I would like to do.
I didn't listen to the podcast because I'm old, and there are certain mediums I still don't trust for factual information. I know nothing about the podcast. It's probably factual.
Okay.
But I listened to it for a few minutes, and then I was like, I'm gonna go record my own podcast talking about this. I want to do something I maybe trust a little bit deeper. So naturally I turned to the TV, because you can't lie on TV or misrepresent anything.
It's against the rules.
I'm trying to convey that I understand my logic makes no sense, but I'm old. Anyone can post anything on the internet.
The YouTube doc sounded legit though, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll at least check out the YouTube doc. You'll have to send me the links to it, because I definitely want to dig into that.
Trying to look at. Isn't there a way to see your history of like what you listen to?
Typically,
because I listened to it for a few minutes, and then before I turned it off.
I'll do some of our plugs real quick while you're digging for that. If you would like to follow the show more, you can check us out on Twitter at SPR Filmcast. Any ratings or reviews on whichever platform you found us on is always appreciated. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are catching us on our YouTube uploads. Really appreciate that. And share us out to your friends. And man, check out Memories of Murder, because this movie will fuck you up, but it's like a must-watch movie to me. I think you gotta check it out.
Here it is. Yep, it's a 45-minute episode. Me with the 45 minutes, and it turns out to be 90. Like I said, I know nothing about this podcast or this lady. So I didn't turn it off due to anything about her or the podcast. I just got a funny feeling I needed to find a different source if I was going to sit down in front of a microphone.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, if some poor schmuck like me can get a microphone and put out a podcast, I mean, literally anyone could put anything out.
True.
So that was my only thought. But it's called Monsters Among Us, a Filipino/Asian true crime podcast. Again, you gotta forgive me. Her name, Chachi Caneso. See, Filipino and Filipina names are sometimes weird because they have a lot of Hispanic influence. So there's like a weird mix of Asian and Hispanicness to their names. I have no idea how to pronounce this.
I wouldn't either. I don't blame you.
That's why my wife's name is CR, Christina CR, because that's the Hispanic spelling for Christina.
Speaking of Christina, she is next up on Friends and Family Month. So would you like to announce what we're going to be covering next week, Ron?
Her pick, and you're going to love the why, is Moulin Rouge.
Okay.
So we recently talked about chick flicks a few episodes ago. Then we have been watching with the kids Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Star Wars movies, the main entries, the episodic movies. And basically, she just wasn't finished watching Ewan McGregor, and she wants to watch this movie with me because Ewan McGregor.
I've never heard a better reason.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
well played.
Fuck, Nicole Kidman's in this movie, and I want to watch it for Ewan McGregor. I mean, come on.
He's Ewan goddamn McGregor, man.
Ewan goddamn McGregor.
I just want to quickly point out the Friends and Family roller coaster of Tammy and the T-Rex to Memories of Murder to Moulin Rouge. That is wild. I just imagine someone catching our podcasts like
what the fuck is this?
Like 2 years from now and seeing like a pretty constant trend of like, oh, here's some horror movies, here's some like 90s like Deep Rising style movies, and you know there's like a through line, right? And then you get a Tammy and the T-Rex, Memories of Murder, and Moulin Rouge, and you're just like, what the fuck happened? What were they smoking that month? Just looking at the catalog as a whole without context has got to be a trip in the future for somebody.
But yeah, it's got a really good cast. It is a musical.
I've never seen. So you said you'd seen it, right? Because I've never seen Moulin Rouge.
So I remember. It says here it came out in 2001, but it must have been nominated for an award of some sort, because I remember seeing some of it through the projection booth window, and I wasn't working at the theater then. And sometimes when things are nominated for a reward, they put them back out in theaters. I said reward, I meant award. They put them back out in theaters, so that must be where I first saw bits of it. But I saw it in its entirety, I believe, with my wife at her parents' house when we were dating.
Interesting. Yeah. So what's interesting too is I used to kind of shrug off musicals because they were just kind of never for me. I've kind of come around to them a little bit over time as I've gotten older. So
is that over Aurora time?
It's actually the one that kind of like converted me a little bit was Hamilton.
Okay.
Hamilton. I started to kind of be a little bit more open to it, and have watched like more of the last few years because of that.
I'm going through the pictures on IMDb, and there's a straight out fucking spoiler for the end of the movie in the IMDb photos.
Okay, I will not look at the photos then. So good to know.
Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman, I'm gonna go through the photos, and there's a straight up fucking spoiler.
That's crazy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was half shocked, half needing to get that out there.
No, you're good. You're good. So we'll be covering Moulin Rouge.
It is available on Hulu.
Okay.
And
I think I have Hulu.
If you don't have the Hulus, you can probably get a free trial.
That's the thing, dude. I go through, I feel like I just abuse the fuck out of free trials for everything. And I feel like you should only get one of those, but I always find a way to get more, and I don't know how. But
Yeah.
I find a way, man.
It's interesting. It must be because it's available on Hulu, but for rent, it's on Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, and then all the off ones, right? Like Redbox, Vudu. But yet you can buy it for $5 on Apple TV. You can rent it for $3.99 on Amazon or buy it for $4.99 on Amazon. Like, what is happening with Moulin Rouge?
Yeah, I do not know.
Especially with the popularity of Ewan McGregor right now, with Obi-Wan Kenobi just having ended not too long ago. You would think this thing would be all over the place, but
no clue. But yeah, that's been our show. Thanks again to Soapey for his selection of Memories of Murder. I will never be the same.
This was a life-changing movie.
Changed. Yeah, I'm fundamentally changed, but I'm glad that I watched it, and I got to check out more of Joon-ho stuff, because fuck, Parasite, Snowpiercer, and Memories of Murder is just a crazy trifecta of stuff that I've seen that I need to check out more. But anything else you wanted to touch on before we hop out of here, Ron?
No, I'm
about good.
The potential that Aurora has to just destroy us is Tammy and the T-Rex levels. Like, I feel like she's the one I'm afraid of right now, because she has the ability to either give us something good, really, really good, or to just fucking ruin this show so hard that we walk away from it and never record another episode, I feel like.
Yeah, she's the Zodiac killer of SPR.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm living in fear of that. I'm contemplating seeing if my dad wants to contribute anything. I already know.
Yeah,
I already know it's going to be Avatar, but because that's his favorite movie. But
I feel like he would never speak to us again, because
he's not going to listen.
Once that movie gets picked and we have to watch it, once we have to sit down for 3.5 hours of our lives and watch that shit again, it's not going to go well in that recording.
Hey, here's the thing. The reason I'm considering reaching out to him, he might not even be willing to give us anything, because he gets weird about being involved in things like this. But from talking to my dad, there is nothing he doesn't watch on TV or any streaming platform. The guy watches everything.
Yeah, he's a renaissance man when it comes to that shit.
He's gotta have talking about
TV. I used to watch a lot of TV. He was watching even more TV than me at the time, and I was impressed, because I was watching way too much fucking TV at the time. And he was like, he had watched literally anything I could think of, and I was like,
the only thing you can't talk to him about is sports. He doesn't follow any kind of sports. But okay. When you were helping us move and you got to ride with my dad in the U-Haul, I was in my car driving to the apartment like, I wish I knew what they were talking about right now, because they don't know each other. It's the first time they've ever met each other. There's several generations between them. Like, what the hell could they possibly be talking about? And you guys came out like the best of friends. Like, you guys were just talking to each other the rest of the day. I barely got to talk to you that day.
Yeah, I think I'm a informal Huddleston family member now. I think I was adopted.
It was welcome to the family, so funny to hear you guys just coming out of the U-Haul in mid-conversation and just stand next to the U-Haul, continuing talking about some TV show. I was like,
shoot the shit.
I was like, what
TV.
the shit is happening right now?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Because I'm just like so fucking hyper aware of TV and movies and shit. I can have conversations about stuff I haven't even fucking seen, and that was like the scary thing at the time. I was like, I think he was mostly talking about Chuck, and
that sounds right.
I was familiar with Chuck because my family was like really into it, and I had watched like an episode or two. But I could talk about fucking any show because I'm just omnisciently aware about fucking TV and movies, because that's like all I do.
My dad watches so much. I would be intrigued to see what he would pick for us.
Honestly, like, if you want to, just go ahead and like throw out the idea to him, and if he ends up, picking something he would like us to cover, we could have like a little bonus thing. And if he doesn't want to, no harm, no foul. So yeah, definitely, I'm always down to extend it for more if we have people that want.
The problem is that people that I know is my wife, you, and Bobby. I do the show with you, and you pick stuff for me all the time. We already reach out to Bobby, and my wife already contributes. So like, I don't have anyone else to talk to contribute, but I'm really curious what he would say.
Yeah, definitely throw it out to him, see what he says, because we can always have a bonus episode, and if we don't, no harm, no foul. So never. I'm always down for if like more people want to throw stuff into the hat, because it is fun to just have like here you go, have fun, go watch Taming the T-Rex, go watch Memories of
We're talking
Murder.
about a guy whose favorite movie is James Cameron's Avatar, and also the guy that saw The Wolfman in theaters.
That's great. He's the one person. He's the mythical dude. All right, we gotta get the fuck out of here before this episode gets 2 hours, though. So, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks again to Soapey for his selection. Soapey has redeemed himself for the last Avatar. The last Avatar.
He didn't need.
My apologies.
He didn't need to redeem himself in my eyes. That's one of my favorite things we've ever recorded.
I mean, I lost like 5 years off my life, but who needs those? I
just turned off my microphone and ate popcorn. I think I said 2 sentences the whole time.
You're the embodiment of the goddamn Michael Jackson gif with the popcorn. Was that just your little time?
Yeah, I was thinking about the Colbert one when he has the giant thing and the 3D glasses on.
Yeah. But thanks again, everybody, for listening. Have a good night.
Say it for me. Juxtaposition. Yeah, juxtaposition.